Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. And for me, it's a reacquaintance with the garden because I've been away in America for the last couple of weeks. And the garden has changed. We've left a lot of that vibrant colour of June and very early July behind, and in its place, the deeper, more velvety colours are starting to pick up. You can see the heleniums are there, and the dahlias are kicking in right now. And there has been an awful lot of lush growth. This fennel is fabulous. Everything about it is right, except it's in the wrong place. And the right plant in the wrong place is a weed.
So if I just cut this one here with like that.
Now the helenium is starting to appear.
Take this one.
Yeah, that's better. And rather than take these to the compost heap, these will go in a big vase on the table for a dramatic display. On today's programme, we meet a family in Glamorgan who have set their garden alight with a blaze of summer bedding. Adam visits Sledmere House in Yorkshire to celebrate their exquisite use of colour. And I've got a whole batch of special jobs for you to do before you go away on your holidays. A few weeks ago, we did a programme focusing on wildflowers, and we had a fabulous response. It does seem that people are now really interested in both preserving the wildflowers that we've got in the countryside and also to growing them in our gardens. It doesn't matter how big the area, the technique is exactly the same. You need to cut the grass as short as you can. Wildflowers do best on poor soil. So always remove the clippings when you mow to help reduce the fertility. Next stage is to rake it really vigorously. Right, that's as much grass taken off as I can, but I'd like to see some more bare soil, so I'm going to use a different kind of rake. What you need is the aggression of a really sharp rake, and you can see that if I scratch on there, look, it's really disturbing it and working up the soil, and that's absolutely perfect. Wildflower seed is now relatively easy to get hold of thanks to the internet. So if you look for a wildflower seed supplier, and there are 2 or 3 really good ones, and then put in the conditions, your soil, whether it's shade or full sun, whether you want a wildflower meadow that will be at its best in spring or right through till autumn, they will provide a seed mix that is perfect for your conditions. So that's fantastic. And that's what I have here. Now that seed is enough for 10 square meters. And the bit that I'm preparing is about 5 square meters. So I only need half that amount of seed. This is a general wildflower mix containing things like cowslip, scabious, and bird's foot trefoil. These are grassland wildflowers. If you grow poppies or cornflowers, they belong to arable fields and they will not grow in grass. So make sure that when you get your wildflower mix, that it is meadow wildflowers and not cornfield wildflowers. Now I've got some sand here, which I'm going to use as a base because it's much easier if you've got more material to spread. So I'm going to mix half this packet with some yellow rattle. This mix does contain yellow rattle, but because I'm sowing into an existing lawn, I'm adding some more. Yellow rattle is a wildflower and it's partly parasitic on grass roots. So wherever you have yellow rattle, you have less grass. It's known as the meadow maker. Wildflower growers of any kind revere it because it definitely helps establish other wildflowers at the expense of grass. Now mix this up. Right, follow the instructions and don't sow any more seed than is suggested. Not all of these seeds will germinate, and quite a lot of them won't germinate till next spring. I'm just going to rake that over lightly and then tread it in. Right. Now, the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that there's direct contact between the seed and soil. To germinate, the seed actually needs to be touching the soil with as much surface area as possible. Now, what I'm doing is mimicking the hooves of cattle or sheep. Because when you cut hay and all the seeds drop to the ground, as soon as any grass begins to grow, you put cattle or sheep in to graze it. And as they walk over, picking off the new green grass, their hooves are pressing down on the bare soil in between the grass and pushing the seeds into the ground. So that's it. We've done our work. And actually, one of the beauties of a wildflower meadow or verge is there's not that much to do. And there is so much to enjoy. Because apart from the pleasure and the beauty of the flowers, you're going to get wonderful butterflies to watch, interesting insects, even the birds benefit. I suppose you can't make a bigger leap in gardening styles than from wildflowers to bedding plants. But most of us use both. I certainly do here at Longmeadow, because bedding plants are absolutely lovely, and I have loads of them here. And we went down to South Wales, to Glamorgan, to visit a family that use their bedding plants with real panache and flair.
The garden is probably one of the most important family spaces for us. We spend a lot of quality time here. In fact, in the summer, we hardly ever eat inside, so we have 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and, the evening meal in the garden. We spend time with my son here. We come from Pakistan, Asia, and that's where I've grown up, which is the climate is different, the vegetation was remarkably different. Coming here was an absolute eye-opener. It was such a massive change when I moved here after I got married to Sabi. The vegetation was really different. It was beautiful, the greenery was beautiful, and I really appreciated it when I first came in. But as you get used to it, I kind of started to miss those massive mango trees and the fruit trees and the bougainvilleas that extended far and beyond. Wherever I can, I try and embrace and amalgamate both the elements from the cultures. So I haven't got those bougainvilleas, but I've got the petunias just to add that blast of colour, to give me that connection with my childhood memories from Pakistan and the climate there. We save a lot of money on buying plants in bulk, and we save them around April, May time in the greenhouse, and before planting them in the baskets and pots for the summer ready. We absolutely love to travel. We went to Lake Como, Bellagio, and there was this Villa Belbianello over there. And I found that amazing. They had these fantastic railings and statues, and with sort of Mediterranean large pots and lemon trees, and really interesting combination of statues and the colourful flowers next to them. That trip inspired us to add some more statues to the garden, just to add some interest and focal points in different areas of the garden. The red fuchsias are just my favourite flower. They just add that exuberance to the garden. And I love the contrast of colours. The deep purple and the red, they remind me of our trip to Morocco, where in Marrakesh we went to Majoral Gardens, and it was fantastic. So every time I see fuchsias, it brings back memories. I've got to be honest, my husband does most of the watering, but I do help out.
So garden is my sanctuary, and it is my haven. Whatever time of the day or whatever mood you're in, it just cheers you up. It's just, you can wind down and enjoy it. Because our background is more or less in art and architecture, so we understand composition, color, and all that. It's not a big issue for us to agree basically upon.
They used to have these calendars back home when you see as a child of like exotic places with tulips, and I used to wonder, what I don't know if they're real, because I'd never seen one, obviously. So it's amazing to actually see a tulip for the first time. It's a surrounding that you've created for yourself, and it just gives you this feeling of satisfaction, and you get pleasure out of it. Every time you plant something and it comes out, it's just a surprise every time. I forget every year, and then I see the plants come out, and it's absolutely an amazing feeling. It's exciting.
I'm going to share with you my incredible collection of fuchsias. Probably the worst fuchsias ever appeared on Gardener's World. But actually there is a bit of a story behind them, because I put them outside to harden off in April, and they got hit by a sharp frost and killed them stone dead, or at least that's what it appeared to be. Now, I know from experience that you shouldn't treat anything as dead until it's been dead for at least a few months, if not longer, because it is surprising what will grow back from the roots. Now, I'm fairly confident that I can get these back into good health. There's a side shoot coming from there, so if I cut just above it, it should be okay. And that is completely dead. And this one needs less dramatic surgery, more of a trim. This would very quickly re-establish as a standard on a nice straight stem, and then an explosion of flower at the top. But what I'll do is plant it, and then I'll prune it back in a couple of months' time. This is a fairly shaded spot, and fuchsias will be very happy. In fact, they grow best for me in light shade. Right, should be big enough hole. Now that should come out. Now that is very dry. Fuchsias don't like being dry. They like moist air, and they like moist but well-drained soil. There we go, perfect size. Perfect. If it gets really dry, I will give that a soak weekly. Now, fuchsias only just creep into the jewel garden because it does verge on pink, and pink is a no-no in this part of the garden, although it is saved by the intensity of the purple. And I like these colour games. Of course they're arbitrary, the rules are made up. But it is a great help if you're trying to create a really good border. And colour discipline is something that is both fun and takes great skill to do properly. And Adam has been to visit a garden where colour is used with real finesse.
As a garden designer, I find it absolutely fascinating as to how we use colour in our gardens. We chase those perfect borders, but also it can be difficult to understand and feel like you just can't get it right. So if you arrive at a garden that you think's got it just right, if you're anything like me, you just want to find out a little bit more. Sledmere House is in East Yorkshire. Within a walled garden of 2.5 acres, head gardener Andy Karavich has been building a series of smaller gardens over the last 9 years. His love of colour stems from the Cambo estate in Scotland, famed for its naturalistic, colour-filled plantings. Was that the garden that kicked everything
Completely,
off?
yeah. It was a fabulous experience. It really was. Suddenly I realised how important colour was,
Yeah.
and how much control you can have over it as well.
Yeah.
And how much you can control people's views and how they perceive borders simply by how you manipulate the colour.
So obviously this is a big space, but is on a slope, so it must have taken some understanding of, I suppose, the climate of the place.
As we walk down here, we're in a giant frost pocket.
Yeah.
And there's no way out for the frost down the bottom.
So you created a tropical border?
Yeah.
Which is, you know,
Yeah.
which comes with its challenges, but it
It
also
does.
proves you can, doesn't it?
Completely. And the beauty of this garden now is we've done it so it evolves. Week on week, it's changing.
Yeah.
And through the season, it almost softens as the planting gets going.
Yeah. Andy uses colour in each of his gardens to create different emotions. His favourite fills a long space, just 8 metres wide. But the feeling he wanted to bring was simple. You love those words, you know, to drive that emotion. What was it in here?
To me, pure joy. Just kind of loving life, soft as well, but just lovely, really.
It's strong. It drives all the way through the middle.
Yeah, your eye, the idea is your eye is drawn right into it, and it's more of a walk and a stroll. It's maybe not a garden you would sit in so much.
Yeah.
It flows right through to the other side. It's an immediate impact garden.
Yeah.
It's broader sweeps of colour as well, so from a distance, it hits you quicker.
Yeah, and the relationship with the copper beech you've got, you know, through the middle, it gets picked up as you go down through the space.
Yeah.
And I love the way that you're not just running down one side, you're bouncing it from side to side, but it's not quite formal, is it? Though the centre is formal.
Yes. The planting is, there's 10 drifts of each thing.
Yeah.
5 either side, but it's not symmetrical. So it's unsymmetrical balance. So your eye will come in, you don't pick up the symmetry at all, but you pick up that the garden's balanced.
But even the astrantias, I mean, they're just about to change, aren't they? So some of them
Yeah.
are going over, some new coming. But you're not in there deadheading, you're just leaving that and letting it be.
Yeah, well, the Astrantia and the alliums were my bridging colour, I call, between my spring colour and my summer colour.
Yeah.
So they hold the garden for a period while everything's catching up, but they're actually still adding to it.
Yeah.
Almost in their death. So no, don't look at deadheading very much.
Yeah. And what did you tell me? You sort of weren't very good at designing, that's what you said, didn't you?
Yeah, not very good at designing.
Come on. Just below the long garden, the colour palette changes completely around a striking circular pond. This feels very different. Andy's created a completely different mood in here, and the hairs on the back of my neck have gone up and I've got goosebumps. He's calling it a reflective garden, but it feels quite moody. It really does. You get a sense that this garden instantly means something to Andy. The dark water really sets that tone, picked up in the heucheras, and not a plant I'd go to first time round, but that feels like it's been just rippling out into the rest of the planting. You've got dark roses on both sides of you, and then it's picked up in a cotinus. But then actually, if you stand up and just take a moment, the lighter colours start to play their part. I've got hemerocallis and softer roses, and the mood lifts. Interesting talking to Andy about designing with plants, and music has come up more than once. I think this is driven by something obviously quite deep and meaningful, and my kids laugh at me at home. I think they think I'm a bit soft, to be honest. I can play an album when I'm creating planting plans, and I'll keep doing it on a loop. And I've even got music with me sometimes when I select the colours that I'm going to use. You know, it's amazing how powerful colour can be. The exotic border is a real feat. It sits really comfortably, and the use of colour is pure craft. Yellow's been used to great effect here, not only to lift what could be a dark space, but it draws your eye all the way down the border. You could do that in your own garden, moving from side to side, but what I like is the fact we start with Coreopsis, then we've got Achilleas, then we've got lilies, a little bit of Rebecca, and we finish on the Phophia. So what's clever about this, not only are these plants being chosen to flower at the same time, but they're all different shapes, and we add that extra layer of interest. You really can see Andy's heart and soul in this place. He's used various palettes of plants to affect mood and atmosphere in different spaces. But it's all personal to him. And I think that's the key. If you want to create maybe a new border or an area around the terrace, first of all, work out how you want it to feel. And then after that, choose a palette of plants that affect that feeling in you.
The subtlety of the colours there takes real expertise. But at this time of year, at Longmeadow, subtlety gives way to real intensity of colour, and none more intense than these agapanthus on the mound. They'll last for a few weeks more, and at their best, they are radiant. A few weeks ago, I sowed this bed with a variety of vegetables that could be done in the middle of July and get a decent harvest before the end of the growing season. Well, these are the results so far, which are mixed. We've got some good germination. There's a row here of little gem, half a row of salad bowl, half a row of spinach, and so far the French beans are fine. But 3 of the 4 climbing beans have been eaten, and I think the culprit are slugs. What's interesting is that the row of little gem nearest the edge has almost entirely been eaten, and yet they haven't touched that. If you do get a decent row like this, the thing to do is to thin them, and that can seem hard, but is essential if you want nice, big, healthy, finished plants. So I just go along and just pull out every other one. Now, what you can do is use these thinnings to replace the gaps elsewhere. So if I just pop these straight into the ground at a decent spacing, it may be that they will survive. Now, they won't grow at anything like the same rate as the other row. Well, so far, not ideal, but that's real life. That's what it is like growing vegetables, and you learn from every failure. But we'll keep an eye on this. However, I want to just fill up another bed with plants that I have prepared earlier. And this is the way that I normally grow vegetables if I possibly can, which is to sow them in a seed tray, prick them out into plugs, and then plant them out when they're growing strongly. Whenever I clear a bed, I always give it a top dressing of compost. And what this does is add beneficial bacteria and fungi to the soil. I'll just level this out. First in are the cauliflowers. This is a variety called Snowball. Nice white curd. So the plugs look like that. Quite a small plant, but a decent root system, and they're dead easy to plant. Just make a hole and put it in like that. So like that. And then here like that. And the sort of spacing, about the same spacing so they are on an actual grid. So that one will go in there, for example. In fact, the spacing between the individual plants is really relevant to the outcome of the final cauliflower. Put them closer together and you'll have smaller curds. Give them lots of room and you can have whopping great show ones that look magnificent. There's plenty of room to plant another crop that you can harvest and enjoy before the cauliflowers get too big. This is red salad bowl, which tastes really good and also looks good because the red will turn a really rich burgundy and breaks up the almost ubiquitous green of a salad. Now, I'm planting these quite close together because I'm not wanting them to mature fully. I don't want their maximum size because the cauliflower are the main crop. So I'm going to be picking these quite small. Right, that's a bed planted, but they won't grow successfully unless I keep them watered. Absolutely essential, don't let them dry out. And the other thing they need doing is protection from cabbage white caterpillars. So after I've watered these in well, I will construct a frame and put netting over it. Right, that's going to keep me busy. Here's some things for you to do before you go away on holiday. If you grow sweet peas, be sure to pick every last flower and give them away. Because if you don't do that, there's a real risk that you'll have far more seed pods than flowers when you return. If you've got plants in pots, grouping them together closely side by side in shade will create a protective microclimate. And if you can put them in a tray half filled with water, that's ideal. And then if someone can come and check them once while you're away to top up the water, everything should survive until you get back. It's not the ideal time for a vegetable grower to go on holiday, but you can mitigate the damage by harvesting as much as possible. So any lettuce that might go to seed, pick beans, peas, courgettes, give them to friends and family, and then on your return, you can start to harvest for yourself. One little word of warning. If you are going on holiday overseas, resist any temptation to bring back plant material, be it plant, cutting or seeds, because the risk of importing a pest or disease is just too great. Enjoy the holiday, visit gardens, and then come back to your own garden without risking that possibility. And talking of your own garden, the Paradise Garden here has been a real success for me personally because it's exceeded what I wanted from it. I always knew that the elements of symmetry and water gently flowing, fruit and fragrance were important, but it's gone beyond that. We had the steepers, which are now getting really fluffy, the verbena, which has doubled in size since I've been away, and the cornflowers are just popping through. So far, this has been a real success. It made us very happy. Well, that's it for today. We'll be back here at Longmeadow at the same time next Friday. So until then, bye-bye.
Actor James Norton reads Sweet Sorrow, the new coming-of-age novel by David Nichols on the BBC Sounds app. New drama next on BBC Two explores the partnership between two greats of musical theatre, Fosse and Verdon.